and just take one. Soft sticks. I'm just going to go shift that lamp.
Yep.
Give you a thumbs up. We roll it.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Slightly warm.
Yes, it's getting hot here.
Okay, well, where shall we start? When Steve saw gesturing to the man with the lamp behind you. To
Okay, so that's not about me.
No, so anyway,
I was just thinking, what is that? Okay.
It'll be fine. I'm just going to do it all the way through the
Okay, so you will never point to me to do something? It may, okay. I will hear you then.
Excellent. Standing by and set.
Okay. How did you start in science? What was the attraction of science and medicine?
Well, it's interesting. I think that I commenced in medicine because I wanted to help people. I have that idea of being a doctor, probably reading books. I love reading, and I have so passionate as a teenager and at the school reading all these books about medicine and doctors helping people, and it was quite an amazing time. So I was saying to all my friends, yes, I want to be a doctor. Well, everybody wanted to be a fireman or policeman or things like this. And during high school, still I kept that feeling. I started to get attracted by science as such. I love chemistry and I love biology, but still the medicine thing was there. Then I got into medicine finally. I started to first year of medicine, getting a whole lot of new knowledge. And there was an opportunity to go to the lab during summer. In Spain, summer is a very long time. It's almost 3 months. So you could be during 3 months doing something else. And I just volunteered to go to the lab. It was a biochemistry lab. And in the lab, we start to feed flies and bees with different sugars and see what the effect we're having on those. And then exploring why some flies and some bees will survive with those sugars and some of them they will die. And discovering the mechanisms, that discovery was good, was very, I don't know how to describe, exhilarating. It was just amazing. And probably it reminds me of the other books that I read, that it was the explorers' books, people that they went to find new worlds. I like science fiction and thinking that you're in a space, traveling through the space, looking for a new planet, discovering what's in that planet. So that thing of the discovery really attracted me. And since then, I haven't stopped doing research.
Well, I so get what you mean. I agree. So you started with biology. So where to now? When did you change from bees and flies to larger game?
Yeah, so, well, that was, of course, the evolution. I was doing medicine, and if you're in medicine, you deal with patients. And when I was doing my rotations in medicine, you rotate in a hospital. That's one of the good things about the training in medicine, that you're on the job all the time, the real job. You're in a hospital, you're seeing patients. You work in different departments. One of the departments that I got involved was dermatology. And this department in Spain, in the Hospital Universitario de la Princesa, we're doing some research together with a laboratory group in immunology, and it attracted me. It was just the perfect setting. You could treat patients, you could see problems with your patients, you can take it to the lab, and you could try to do a research in the lab. What now we call translational research. At that stage, there was no such a name in the type of research, so it was commencing. That was the perfect setting. So move from working in a biochemistry lab that it was a little bit far from humans to start to look into problems that will affect human health.
Was there any inspiration that you had with the research? let me phrase this. The history of medical research. Was there any inspirations that you cited that made you excited yourself?
The main thing probably was my first mentor, I have to say. That biochemistry professor was amazing, how he could see life and experience and how you work to improve knowledge. It was very, very pure science. It was not, applied science. He wanted to know more. He was one of those that will tell me many things like, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is here. The only thing that we need to do is look differently. Okay, if you look differently to the same problem, you may find a solution. You need to think about 1,000 experiments and during the day remove 999, get only one, and the next day you need to get new experiments to finally get the answer to the question. So that mentor really changed my life. I remember him very fondly. Unfortunately, he passed away before I finished medicine, so that was the reason probably I also moved from the very basic fundamental research in the lab to move to more translational research, and of course being involved with the dermatology group in the hospital, that drove me to that research in humans.
So you studied dermatology in Spain?
Yep. So it was trained as a dermatologist in Spain. I commenced my training. I worked in Spain for almost 15 years in dermatology, and one of my dreams was to be an academic, and getting in Spain in the academic career was complicated for how the structures are in the universities. I applied to different positions in different countries. In particular, I was looking in Australia. There was one position here at the University of Sydney. So I applied. I came all the way. They interviewed me and they thought that I was the perfect candidate and I got the position. So since then, I'm here working in Sydney.
So just one sort of Spain, then Australia, nothing in between?
For a few months, not even a year, I was in the US. I had an experience in Harvard University, working in the Massachusetts General Hospital. And I got to know really amazing people there that also were very involved in this translational research, looking at how we, from patients, can go to the lab, get discoveries in the lab and try to apply it again back to the patients.
Do the different people of different nationalities work differently, or is it all very much collaborative and of the same?
We give different flavors. The background, so how your family is, what the cultural environment, gives you a different view of how you do research. Although there's some principles, and we all follow the principles, we need to find the right evidence. Certainly, you get different ideas, and I love the multiculturality that we have here, and in particular in Western Sydney. It's just so amazing. My friends in Spain, they say, "Oh, your department looks like the UN. Doesn't look like a proper Spanish department." And it's true. Spain, for many years, Spaniards, they went out and about in the world, and yes, was one of the old empires. And once Spain lost most of the different colonies and other territories, got very, very concentrated in itself and not that willing to go anywhere. And it has been quite, in a way, endogamic. And that coming here has been just so different for me. And my friends, they really are amazed with the people that I work with and the environment that I'm working in. And I think that gives more different views to the research and make it more fruitful, if you think so.
Excuse me, I'd like you to expand upon that, if you can, a little bit, just about the difference. Not something I'd expected to hear, but with Australia and Spain, I thought there would be some difference, but I love the way you're explaining it. So
yeah, so that's my reading books and reading what in particular in literature, they talk about the depression that happened after Spain lost the last colony that was Cuba. And there's a lot of books about those times in Spanish history and how the whole country went to a time that even it was written, we don't need to research, leave it to other people, we need just to enjoy life. And that concept has come in many European countries. They think that Spain is only about dancing and music and all these things. And it's good, don't take me wrong. I love going to Spain. It's an amazing place to live. I recommend everybody to live in Spain because the life is amazing. But certainly at the time of getting into more science, could be more challenging than in other countries. But on top of that, was very concentrated in itself. So very few people will travel abroad. When I came to Sydney, and we were talking about year 2007, so not that long ago, I was one of the few doctors that ever left Spain. Most people will be raised, born, raised, educated in a city, and sometimes not even moving from the same city. So coming here was, hey, these people, what they're doing, every 2 days they're changing jobs, every 2 days they're changing cities, and you have people from the whole Asia, Middle Eastern, a lot of different countries in Europe. It was almost a shock, but an amazing shock. I think that has helped me to learn a lot about life, world, and the research that we're doing.
Excuse me, great answer. And so from medicine to research.
Yep.
How did you pull that one off?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting. I see many of my colleagues that are just pure dermatologists or pure clinicians, and they have a different view of how to treat a patient. They're almost a cookbook. You know, you get your diagnosis, you put your treatments, and that's it. I've realized that I get my patients as an experiment. Not that I'm experimenting with them, but I have my hypothesis. This patient may have this condition. And then I get my tests to confirm that, and then I look at the results of my test plus my hypothesis, and I say, well, this is confirming, not confirming. So instead of using as a book, I use my skills as a researcher. And I still use those skills as a researcher in my research, of course. So what happened with my research has been changing in these years, depending on the environment. When I was in Spain and commenced to do my own research, I was looking into photobiology. There was no photobiology lab in Spain, so the effect of light on the skin. So I built the first one, and I got connections with the US, connections with France, that there were good photobiology labs, get to know what would be the technology that I need to use, how to grow the cells, skin cells, keratinocytes, they're the name, melanocytes, the cells that give the color to the skin, and Langerhans cells that are part of the immune system, and start to see the effects of light. At that stage, Sydney was one of the important places to do research in photobiology. So that was another attraction to come here. They were doing a lot of things with ultraviolet light. So that moved me, and that's the reason I went into academia, moved to Sydney to be able to dedicate more time to research, because I wanted to help more people. When you're seeing a single patient, you help a single person. And I thought that if I can discover something that could help thousands or millions of people, would be much better. So that has been a drive, trying to get to help more people. And when I came here, it was so different. In Australia, skin cancer, as you know, and everybody knows, is massive. So stop the photobiology, start to help the cancer people, try to get, there were metastatic melanoma, very nasty disease at that stage that will kill most people in a few months. And there were new clinical trials with medication that could change how melanoma was treated and the survival of these patients. So I helped the oncologists try to do some research in that regard and try to look at the mechanisms, because many of these medications were having effects on the skin. And from that, working in oncology and looking at the environment, I realized that Australia has very little knowledge about dermatology, unfortunately. Being skin cancer is so important, dermatology teaching is very poor. So try to get improvement in teaching of dermatology, in training people to understand skin diseases. And then I thought that my research should change, because if I'm doing very basic research, I was not going to help the Australian population. So I moved to what we call non-invasive diagnosis. What it is, non-invasive diagnosis is what dermatologists we do. We don't need to do any blood tests. We look at the skin and we say, oh, you've got an eczema, or you've got psoriasis, or this is a skin cancer, a basal cell carcinoma, or a melanoma. We just look at the skin. We don't need to do a blood test. We don't need to do anything. So why we cannot expand that? And there are two branches that I'm working now. One is imaging, so and AI, artificial intelligence, of course. You get a photo, it's what our brains, they do. We look at the skin, we get the image, and we can understand what's the disease that is going. So that's one, and we're trying to teach machines to recognize things. And the other is collecting biopsies, collecting samples from the skin without doing any surgery. And that's, we use tape. So we put tape on the skin. We collect some of the cells from the top of the skin, so we don't do any wound on the skin. And with that, we can diagnose diseases. So now I'm expanded that part. I think that for rural and remote Australia is going to be amazing, that people could do, even at home. You have something that appears on your skin, you put the tape, you send it to us, and we can tell you what the disease is. So that's the two branches of what I'm researching now, and that's my change from working in flies and this, as I said at the beginning, to go into photobiology, then cancer, and now non-invasive diagnosis. So I haven't been the researcher that has been the whole life dedicated to one topic. I've been moving according to the needs of my surroundings and the people and the labs that I have around.
Fantastic. So you found yourself with cancer. Yeah, you can all cough now. Andrew, do you want to cough? No, okay. Doesn't matter.
Take it. It's free. Take it.
It's kind of weird that melanoma being so widely suffered in Australia, and we didn't have many doctors or physicians who wanted to pursue it.
Well, it's not exactly that. So dermatology is a difficult skill. It will get better if we have the help of artificial intelligence, probably. It's likely, but it will take still time. But the same as not everybody can go to a museum and recognize a painter. I can't do it. I never got trained in that. Doctors, they're not trained in recognizing things on the skin. And for them, everything looks the same. Or if you think about gardening, even more closely to Australian people, you grow things on your garden, there are plants that are coming and you never know what plant is this, if this is a weed or is a proper one. You need to be able to recognize that visual skill is not highly trained at any level. And in medicine it's not. So only 3 specialties probably we have visual skills. That's pathology, radiology, and dermatology. We need to use it all the time. So with that handicap, that means that most doctors, they finish their training with minimal knowledge of how to recognize things on the skin. And dermatology is not like cardiology, that people could die from the heart attack and it's very dramatic and they need to go to ED. This is a very slow type of disease that comes on the skin and appears. The melanoma doesn't pop up, it's the one type of melanoma in one day. They usually say slow brown spot on your skin that is slowly changing. So it's not unusual that people, they take a long time to recognize them. So that's one problem. It's a difficult skill. The second thing is how we train people in Australia is very costly, and someone has to pay for that training. That's not well organized in Australia, unfortunately. So finally, there are not that many positions in dermatology to train enough doctors. So the workforce in dermatology is small. That's the reason in Australia we have a type of specialist that doesn't exist in continental Europe at all, and probably doesn't exist at all in the US. That is the skin cancer doctor. The skin cancer doctors, they're GPs, but they have an interest to help their patients with the skin conditions, in particular with the skin cancer. So they get, some of them, they get some courses done. Many they're online. That is a shame, because certainly the knowledge could be more difficult, that face-to-face learning. And they learn to recognize some of the skin cancers. So many of the skin cancer job in Australia is done by GPs with some interest in skin cancer, while in the rest of the world, in particular in Europe and the US, will be dermatologists. So that's a hit and miss in the way we organize care in Australia. Some of the GPs that are practicing in skin cancer clinics, they're excellent, but quality is not as the level of what you will get from dermatology.
What have you discovered about cancer?
Well, cancer is a complicated topic. So the same as, I will put it in a different, I use this sentence many times. A RAS is not a RAS. When I talk to oncologists, I talk many times to oncologists. A RAS is not a RAS. Things that appear on the skin could be many things. And cancer is not a cancer. To make it to the public, I say a human is not a human. Okay, people, they think that cancer is this disease. Well, no, cancer is not a disease. Cancer is a behavior of a tissue, a cell, that is like saying humans, they all eat and breathe. Yeah, that makes all the humans the same. No, well, that's the same with cancer. Okay, so skin cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, they're completely different. But when you talk about skin cancer, it's not one cancer. We have more than 20, probably close to 100 different type of cancers. And each of them, they're different. So we have the melanoma, the most famous in Australia, is the biggest killer of skin cancer in Australia and in the rest of the world. Melanoma is very frequent, but it's not as frequent as the next two that are important. They're called basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinomas.
Sorry, say them again.
Basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. These two, they're so frequent that there's no registry. Nobody's counting them. We don't know how many they are. But it's extremely frequent, and they're completely behavior to melanoma. Basal cell carcinoma rarely is going to kill anybody, but could create problems because we need to cut it out. And of course, if it's close to an eye or it's in the nose, then we deform the face when we cut it out. Squamous cell carcinoma, or SCC, this one could metastasize, could kill people. So we need to be a little bit more careful, in particular if there's in some areas of the face that could metastasize or go to other organs quickly, but it's not as aggressive as melanoma. But that's the three big ones, and we have way many others. So what is it we do with cancer? We try to understand mechanisms for each of these cancers that could control or remove the disease. And this is only on skin. Sometimes mechanisms that could be used abroad, the whole spectrum of cancer, and that will be like communicating to the whole population something about putting your seatbelts or you're not gonna die. Doesn't matter if you're tall or small or whatever, will fit everybody, but you cannot buy shoes for everybody with one just size. No, you need to adjust to everybody. And that's what happened with cancer. You cannot say, hey, we're gonna give this magic pill. There's still many people that they think that there's gonna be a pill or there's gonna be a injection that is gonna cure cancer. That is not possible. It's not possible at all. There are multiple diseases in cancer.
So, they're really well put, incidentally. Thank you for that. So let's talk about the ACRF. What are you doing?
ACRF has been the best for us. I have to say that. Has been glorious. So this was, melanoma is a big thing of course, in Australia, and dermatologists were very involved in melanoma, and we knew that we need to improve how we diagnose melanoma, and we wanted to do as soon as possible, because it was clear when we commenced working in melanoma that if you detect very early, 99.9% of the patients are going to survive, but if that melanoma progresses, kills people. And as I said before, used to kill most people in 8 months. 50% of the patients with metastatic melanoma will die in 8 months. With the new therapies, all through research, immune therapies and target therapies, now 50% of the people that are alive are 5 years. So there's been a huge change from 2007 that I landed in this country to today, and I'm glad to be part of those clinical trials that put these medications in the market, because now things have changed. But still there are 50% of the people with metastatic melanoma that they die, and we need to improve that. We're not the oncologists, we're not the big surgeons that cut out things. We are the dermatologists that can diagnose a small pigmented lesion as a melanoma and cut out early. So that was the idea. How can we recognize early these pigmented lesions? So we look at the technology, and there's a new technology called 3D photography. So people, they will get naked as the one, of course, get into a machine, take one photo, one single photo, and we build the patient in 3D. And you can move the patient in 3D, and I'm sure that you will get images if you need. We can provide those for you so you can see how the technology works. Or if you want, at the end of this interview, we can go and show you a little bit the lab, and you could see, not the lab, the clinical side, and you could see the machine. So we get the person in 3D with quite high detail. Technology in imaging is getting better and better every day. So we can recognize the moles, if they're benign or malignant, just looking at the skin. Very close. Still, we're not 100%, don't take me wrong. That's the research that we're doing. We want to be very good in that. So with this technology, we have one thing. First, we could start screening everybody because you get in a machine. Second, we can build an AI that can help us. Not as much making the diagnosis, it could be, but at least removing people that we don't need to see. If you've got 100 people, one is going to develop the melanoma, but you need to see 100, you dedicate a lot of time. But if you've got a machine that could remove, let's say, 90, finally you only need to see 10. And those 10, you can find the one easier. Okay, that one is going to be found, that lesion going to be removed, and we're improving survival. So we presented this project to ACRF. We want to buy 15 of these devices to install in Queensland, Victoria, and here in New South Wales, and start to scan a lot of Australians from people that they never had a melanoma, they have very few moles, they're low risk, to people that they have already melanomas, they have multiple pigmented lesions, they're high risk. We want to understand how those pigmented lesions, those moles, they change with time, and also cut out the lesions that are important, analyze those, confirm what are the good ones and the bad ones, and with all this info, feed an AI. And we're working in that. We have now the 15 machines installed in Australia. We have collected, I think, that close to 7,000 people. We're very close to half of the project. The project is to collect from 15,000 people. And we start, I don't know how many melanomas already diagnosed, how many benign lesions that we have, and we're gonna start feeding an AI that we're working in developing different algorithms and teach a machine all this information or provide the machine all this information to try to get a tool that could help us to diagnose early skin cancer. My dream, and different people in my team, in the whole ASMIT team, that is how we call the Australian Centre of Excellence in Imaging and Diagnosis of Melanoma. So my dream is that we could have, even at some stage, the machine in your next supermarket. So you go to the supermarket, you swipe your Medicare card, you get inside, you remove your clothes, you take your photo, you put your clothes, you leave the room, and then while you're shopping, you receive a text message that say, oh, your skin is the same as 6 months ago, all good. Or you have a small change, it's important that you come in 6 months to do another. You're excellent, come in a year. Or you need to go to your doctor, there's something on your leg. And then you go to the doctor, and that's the only patient that we need to see. But everybody gets checked very easily. That's my dream, but let's see.
It's a great dream. It's a wonderful dream. And encouraging people to actually get checked out and
Yes.
making it easy.
Make it easy, because that's one of the problems. And it's more important even with males than females. We know that males in particular, and that's the reason there's some campaigns about males, they tend to go really late to doctors and they don't check their skin. And many males, because of gender difference in how we work, means that many males, they're still working outdoors and they're not protecting themselves. They don't want to use creams. They don't want to use a sunscreen. Sunscreen is the first step. We wouldn't have skin cancer. The same as we could reduce 90% of the lung cancers, just stop smoking, we will reduce 90% of the skin cancers if nobody went out to the sun. That's not practical. Sun is all over the place. So what at the end is you need to use your sun protection and sunscreens. Males are very poor in that. So at least we could detect if we have a system very early. ACRF gave us the stepping stone. We have all the machines installed, the system is there, and we're now building what we think is going to revolutionize in the world. It's not going to be only just for Australia. It will be just for the world, a new way of diagnosing melanoma.
Is there anything remotely like it anywhere at the moment?
No. The machine is available. People can buy one of these 3D photographies, but in most places they have one machine. Some hospitals they may have two. They're not interconnected. The main thing here is that we are going to collect data for 15,000 Australians. It's a lot of people that are collaborating in the research to provide all these images for us to understand and develop this artificial intelligence that will help us in the end.
What do you love about your job?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. I love many things. I'm a very passionate person. Probably that's my Spanish background and that red blood that we have. No, my ancestors, they used to fight with bullfighting all the time, and probably that thing of the drive. I don't know, probably African roots that you need to do and demonstrate that you can fight things, and then you get very emotional, very intense. And some people, they say that I'm still very intense to be an Australian, and of course it's that I'm not an Australian. So I like those things that stimulates me. So I like to be the first to discover something. That's the part of the research, that we're doing research and finally we encounter something that nobody has seen and can be applied to people. I love my patients, and that's something that has been a blessing and also a curse. A blessing because I enjoy my clinics and I enjoy talking to them, try to help them, and how many people I could have helped, and I feel so good that they're now running their lives after contacting me. On the other hand, is the challenge to put both things at the same. If you're dedicated to research, you cannot see people. If you're seeing people and you're taking care of all these individuals, then it's very difficult to have your brain doing research. And I've been in this difficult tension for too many years. And that's the only thing that I don't like. But otherwise, I like my work as a clinician. I love my work as a teacher. I really enjoy try to transmit to people more knowledge about dermatology and getting them to help their patients with their skin diseases. And of course, I love the research because I think that that will have a more broad application and will improve more lives.
Has there been anything in the history of research that has appealed to you from the past, or that stuck in your mind, that researchers can achieve?
Oh, there are too many things that research has achieved. We're living this long just because of research, and research at many levels. So it's not only just the new molecule that can help a patient with a metastatic cancer that is very important, but things like food security, water. It's amazing. We can have now water in every place. You know, it's just gorgeous. And that means that we have developed first the research and the technology to allow for these things to happen. If humans were here and doing what we are, all the technology used now to film me and everybody to see this movie is all because research was there. So it's just core. I think that we should never stop doing research. There are more things that is going to happen. The whole revolution of artificial intelligence and how we are going to incorporate in our lives, I think that is a fantastic development in human history. But in the past, there have been many, many important steps. Antibiotics, if we think about science, steroids, the first time that we use a systemic steroid or topical steroids, they revolutionized what we do. In dermatology, we have a medication that we use for acne. Retinoids, they changed the life of so many adolescents. People that were full with acne and they couldn't interact with other young kids, and now they could have a life. It's all gorgeous. I love research. I love what we're getting out of it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to explain simply in shorter words, so I've got it both ways, longer and shorter, what your program with the machines. I want you to run past it again a bit slowly, but with shorter words so we're crystal clear on what you're doing, why it's a breakthrough, and thank you ACRF, of course.
Okay. So we're extremely grateful to ACRF. They provide the ground to develop a breakthrough.
Actually, I'm going to stop you.
Yep.
Don't call it ACRF, the Australian Cancer Research Foundation, because we know what ACRF is, nobody else is. And it's not an ad for them, but good to mention them. Yeah.
Okay. So we're very grateful to the Australian Cancer Research Foundation because their grant provide us with the tool to transform how we diagnose melanoma early so it doesn't kill people. And it's a tool that we're going to develop in Australia, but it's going to have worldwide application. And this tool is that we can now take a full body photography. So with one photo, we take we can see the whole skin of the patient in a 3D image. So we can look for every single mole on the body. And we can repeat this photo multiple times so we can see if something has changed. We're gonna collect, and we're collecting information, moles, and data from 15,000 Australians to build the unique, it's absolutely unique in the world database with all the information about moles and possible melanomas. And with the help of artificial intelligence, we want to create a system that will help to diagnose melanoma as early as possible. So at the end, melanoma is not a killer anymore.
Beautiful. Stephen, this is where I get to. Stephen normally has a question and I've forgotten. Do you know about nothing, Stephen?
No, I think this is all, it's very clear. I mean, I was fascinated with the idea that you can actually detect, by visual examination, the state of the skin. And that's interesting. Why is it that this wasn't as acute a thing in the past?
I've got to say, when you answer his question, but look at me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the thing with why this hasn't happened before is two things. But the main one is imaging. So the technology was very expensive to get cameras that could do something like we're doing now. And the second is we need humans. So up to now, when you wanted to diagnose anything on the skin, you need to skill a human to be a dermatologist. That's what I'm saying about, or I was commenting about, in Australia, most of the skin cancer now is managed by skin cancer doctors because you need a lot of workforce, and in particular in a country like Australia that we have so much skin cancer. So these two factors made that it was very difficult to go there. Everybody knew, this is what my boss would have said, nothing new under the sun. Of course, you just need the means, and this means is having a system that is affordable so we can take a photo of our body easily. We've been during many years taking multiple photos, 16 photos of a person, so the person needs to stand and be in positions, and we take photos of all the different parts of the body, not very useful. Now we have one photo, that's very practical. And the second is that now there's enough software to create an artificial intelligence that help us with the analysis of the skin. So yes, those things, they're getting into fruition, it's getting together, and now is the right time to do this.
So once you've diagnosed it, then what? I mean, then we're done to treatment. And then
Yes.
Is there breakthroughs of treatment?
So early melanoma, the main thing is cutting out the lesion, removing, and that's finished. Okay, it's a small scar. Could we get in not needing a scar? It may, but we're not there yet. The molecules that we use to treat advanced melanoma, not early melanoma, they're still toxic. So it's not something that we will use early in the disease because a small scar is less damaging than any of the medication that we have to treat melanoma.
So you did say that earlier, that medications was, I've forgotten the term you used, but damaging the skin.
Yeah, so when we have advanced melanoma, what we call as advanced melanoma is when the melanoma is not only just on the skin, it's going to the rest of the body. And melanoma tend to evade the immune system very well and is very resistant to treatment. Mainly because melanoma comes from melanocytes. Melanocytes is the cell that protects our body from the damaging effect of the ultraviolet light. So every time that anybody goes up to the sun, anybody that goes out to the sun and receives UV light, the skin suffers mutations. That's a standard. That cannot be avoided unless you're using a heavy sun protection factor in your sunscreen. That DNA damage detected by the melanocyte is what makes the melanocyte to produce the skin color. So we get a tan because melanocytes, they detect themselves that they have mutations in their DNA, and they need to protect themselves and the cells around it. So they need to protect the skin. So every time that we get in the sun, we get mutations in the DNA. So melanocytes, they're trained to be very resistant to death because they need to protect the rest of the skin. That's the reason it has been a very difficult cancer to treat. But most cancer will have long survivals. Small melanomas, not more than 1 millimeter thick. Just think what is 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter thick could kill people. So people, they thinking about a melanoma like a large thing. No, melanomas could be very small, could be 1 centimeter wide, but it's not that what defines the prognosis, it's how deep they are. 1 millimeter deep and can kill you. Just because these cells, they're designed to be very resistant to damage because they need to protect, that you're trained to protect. It's like soldiers, if you can imagine. A soldier that is well trained will do whatever to protect the people around. That's what melanocytes they do. So they're just perfect survival cells. And if they get raw, it's very difficult to control them. So early melanoma, the best thing is to cut it out. To into a small incision, you cut it out. If it's 5 millimeters, 1 centimeter wide, it's not a big scar, and with surgery we can remove it. At this stage, we don't have any treatment that you can apply, like a cream or an injection that will remove the melanoma from the skin. But when the melanoma is on the rest of the body, it has been very difficult to treat, but now the new targeted therapies, that's how we say, because they target a small a molecule inside the melanoma cells and kill them. That's one type. And the other group of molecules that we have, we call that immune therapies. Immune therapies is interesting because it stimulates the immune system to recognize enemies. So they're useful in many cancers. So that's what I said about, yes, sometimes you can find a tool that could help many cancers, not for everyone. So what this tool does is it stimulates the immune system, and the immune system kills the metastasis, okay, and kills the melanoma cells. But those two treatments, they have side effects. So they're too toxic to use for a thing that you can just do a small scar and remove it.
Too toxic because they take everything. They're not so focused.
Yes, they're not so focused. That's one of the problems with many treatments, is that targeted treatments, very specific treatments, there are very few, and most of them, of course, all the cells are similar. You know, we talk about the same thing. If you want to remove a weed in your garden, and you use a weed killer, some of your plants, they die, because at the end, all the plants, they take the same product. So having a weed killer that only kills the weed and doesn't kill anything else is very complicated. We are not there yet. Could we? Yes. With research, we may find what are the targets that will only destroy one type of cell. Okay, immunotherapy, no. Immunotherapy stimulates the immune system. So people, they have many cutaneous adverse events. So one of my research, clinical research, has been describing all these cutaneous effects of immune therapies. And we could discover, for example, and this is good news for patients, that if people, they develop some of the cutaneous effects, side effects of the medication, they're going to survive longer. Their immune system is activated in a way that is going to kill the melanoma cells sooner. So we published that. So now people, they know that if you develop some of the side effects of the immune therapies, your chances of survival, they're higher. And that gives hope to people. So yes, there are too many branches in research. As I said, I love talking about all these things.
Well, I'm happy with everything I've got. Is there anything you want to say?
I think that I've said that too much now. I've been talking for
We'll
too
be the
long.
judge of that. Mr. Timlin?
Yeah, I just got a question. If you're in charge of funding cancer research in this country, where would you put more money? Where would you take money away? And why?
I cannot answer that one.
You're
So-
trying to get him in trouble or what?
Yes, no, the problem is I love skin cancer, and I will say I love skin cancer, and I will say that I want to put as much in skin cancer because it's the most common cancer in Australia, and we need to fix that. But for sure, I understand that breast cancer affecting all these many females, colon cancer, that is the next one. There are topics that we need also to research. If we think about cancer research as a whole, I think that investing more in screening could be good, because what we need is to find out the cancer as soon as possible. And there's a difficult balance in screening because you may find things that don't need to be treated. So being more precise in the persons that we need to target the treatment will be good. If we go to very advanced disease, the problem is when it's very advanced is that there's no medication that cool them all. As I said, there are too many cancers. So we need to stratify. So looking in biomarker research, for example, would be good. Molecules that could identify that this cancer will respond to this medication, this other cancer will respond to this other medication. So doing biomarker research will be very useful, more than generic, let's treat with something. So biomarker research, early diagnosis, those will be my main focus.
Great. Okay.
Okay, we'll cut. We'll just get 1 minute of that.
Yes, okay.